Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
All this lies, as you've been hearing, against the backdrop of no deal, a scenario that delights some hardcore Brexiteers and terrifies just about everyone else. £2 billion has been allocated to 25 departments by government today to hammer home in the most public way possible that they're preparing for a Brexit which sets out no continued relationship with the EU. Does more preparation then make it more likely, or is this a political tantrum to let your own party know you're prepared to go to the wire? Later we'll ask two strategists what they make of the game theory behind it. But first, Nick Watt is still with me. Would you accept, Nick, this is actually a strategy now?
Yeah, it is a strategy. The Prime Minister is quite keen to send out signals to the EU, to send out signals to the Irish Republic and indeed to Brexiteers that she's taking no-deal planning seriously. There was some frustration that this had stalled, but as you were saying, big decisions today. One example, Matt Hancock, who's the Health Secretary, he's chartered a plane that will be on standby to fly vital medical supplies from the EU to the UK if there is disruption. Ironically, it will fly from Maastricht, which is the scene of the Great Treaty, regarded by Eurosceptics as the Federalists treaty that started this whole process back in 1991, fly from there to Birmingham. And the idea is to fly short life items like, for example, isotopes. Now, there are supporters of the government who are hoping that this no-deal planning will concentrate minds in the Irish Republic, where no deal will have a massive impact on them. And perhaps they will be more open to helping Theresa May amend the withdrawal treaty and, crucially, the bit on the Northern Ireland backstop. And I'm told that there was recently a government paper that worked out the impact of no deal on the Irish Republic, and it said that around 80% of road traffic from the Irish Republic to the EU goes via the UK. So if there's problems at Dover-Calais, that will have a huge impact on the Irish Republic, and one cabinet minister was told this could mean that the Irish Republic might need a sort of a Berlin-style air freight into the Irish Republic.
OK. Well, there may be more buses. Well, in Westminster, talk of no deal may just be brinkmanship, but businesses can't afford to see it as a game. James Clayton has been to Oxfordshire to speak to one business owner who isn't laughing.
Getting on for 100 years ago, James Greenham's granddad founded Electromedical Supplies. As the company got bigger, it found new markets across Europe and the rest of the world. 80% of the medical products that this factory now produces are exported. Uncertainty isn't exactly good for business.
Does a no deal keep you up at night?
Yes, sometimes. Yeah, as a manufacturer, there are some big concerns as to what will affect us and how it will affect us.
Last night, the Secretary of State for Health said this on Newsnight.
We've instituted full no-deal planning within the NHS and within the department already.
Mr. Greenham disagrees. His company is a supplier to the NHS and imports components from Europe.
In your view, has there been enough information given to you by the Department of Health?
No, I mean, they haven't let us know of any planning or what they're going to do in the event of a no-deal scenario. All I've heard is that we could look at stockpiling. We could stockpile for 3 or 6 months worth of contingency. But I asked the question, well, where do we find the money in order to stockpile, a quarter of our annual turnover?
Letters will start landing on doormats tomorrow from the government, updating companies on how to prepare for a no deal. As a Conservative in a staunchly Conservative area, Mr. Greenham wonders what happened to his business-friendly party.
What do I think of a Conservative government preparing for no deal? Madness is a short word. I have very little regard at the moment for the political community. I don't think there's any sensible voice coming through the media from politicians which has got any meaning to the business community at the moment. I just don't.
Was there a message you'd like to give to the Secretary of State for Health?
Well, be honest and be open to manufacturers as to what the plan is. Is there a plan? Plans have to be clear, unambiguous, detailed, And I haven't received any idea of any plan coming out from the Department of Health. To unpick everything is really very difficult. And if someone was to say it was easy, they're lying.
Thoughts from business there. Well, Craig Oliver worked closely with David Cameron in Downing Street during the referendum. John McTernan was Tony Blair's Director of Communications when he was in power. And I'm going to ask you to, for now, put aside what you feel about the referendum result and just talk strategy. Do you think Theresa May is bluffing, first of all, Craig?
No, I think you've got to take what happened today on face value. The government does need to plan for no deal, and it needs to demonstrate that it's got details in the closet about what would happen if that was to be the case. I think that it's also, when people say that she's just trying to run down the clock, I think it's actually worse than that. The reality is she's actually on train track thinking. She's on the tracks, she's going to a certain destination, she can't imagine another possibility of taking the train off the tracks and going somewhere else.
But does she make it more likely? Does she make no deal more likely by putting this buffer of $2 billion, which is not nothing, you know, into the preparation?
I think she does, and it's because I agree with Craig. I think the Prime Minister has no capacity for improvisation, no capacity for changing direction, and all negotiation requires that kind of imagination. And I think that the danger is she believes, while she's pursuing her, I think everybody else will change. No one has any incentive to change. Labour MPs have no incentive to change to support her. The DUP don't. Her own Brexiteers don't. There's a lot of people. It now feels to me like the summer of 1914, which is you can see something coming and everything is set and we'll get to the point and we'll topple out because the only thing that's been voted for by the whole House of Commons is invoking, triggering Article 50, and that means that no deal is the default option.
So the question is she scaring the right people with this? Because presumably she's trying to warn people what happens, but is she scaring the people that will change their minds, or is nobody changing their minds?
I don't think many people are going to change their mind if they say, I tell you what, I'm just going to support what I was prepared to vote against last week and you had to pull. I think in as far as she's got a strategy, I'd call it a kind of Macabre plus strategy. It's Macabre because, you know, hoping that something's going to turn up, everything to do with Brexit's got to have a plus after it. The plus for her is at the end of this week, MPs go away, and she thinks that they'll leave, go to their constituencies, get some fresh air and be confronted by the reality there's no easy option here. You don't want a second referendum, most people. You don't want a general election. You don't want no deal. OK, what is it?
So who is she playing to here? Is she playing to the EU, or is she playing to the DUP, or is she playing to the sort of the big rump of sort of moderate mind changers?
I think she'd be foolish if she thought she was playing to the European Union, but no doubt she does in some way because she seems quite foolish in the way she treats the European Union and Ireland. Her only hope can be Labour MPs, moderate Labour MPs, who want to stay in the European Union, but who want to avoid an economic disaster for our country. The problem with her strategy of trying to scare them into supporting her is that she should have spent the last 2 years developing a strategy that included them and the whole of the House of Commons in a conversation about defining the national interest. And the problem is to scare people now, you're very likely to get people frozen into their positions, as Craig was saying, not changing minds wherever they sit.
So I was told that one strategy is to just push back the date of the vote, and you can push it back beyond January the 21st, which nobody's really talked about. And if you don't have the vote, you can just carry on delaying it until you carry on getting everyone on side.
What we're learning, and what I think people find quite difficult, is that something's policy until it's not policy.
Right.
A vote is going to happen until it's not going to happen. And I think that there is a huge amount of brinkmanship that is going on there. But I think ultimately what happens if, you know, Mohammed won't go to the mountain's going to have to find a way of coming to Mohammed. And that, I think, will have to be Parliament in some way, shape or form.
Now, you know what it's like to work with Prime Ministers who are taking things to the brink. I mean, arguably, David Cameron made the same mistake with Europe in terms of expecting greater concessions than he ever got, expecting, you know, the individuals, the people that were always friendly to him at the banquets to kind of deliver more than as a body the EU could.
Yeah, I think that he hoped at some stage somebody would get, look, immigration, which you were talking about earlier in the programme, is a serious issue, and unless you are prepared to relent on this, we've got serious problems. In terms of the EU, I think what a lot of people in Britain find hard to believe is the EU actually thinks they gave David Cameron a huge amount. They believe in the renegotiation that he really did get stuff like being out of ever closer union. And the attitude in Europe at the moment to Theresa May is, look, we relented a lot for David Cameron. You don't think so, but
and for
we
Theresa
did.
May.
And they are saying to Theresa May now, why should we relent for you? You had a vote of no confidence in you last week. 117 of your MPs voted against you. We don't believe you've got the numbers to actually get this through, so we're not going to relent.
Did you see Tony Blair take things as close to the wire as this? Were there moments where you said, you know, you're the steamroller now, you're barking at the wrong tree?
Look, I think the vote, I think on education very often, the vote on tuition fees was very, very close in the end. That was exacerbated by internals between Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. That took it right to the edge. Other votes took it right to the edge. We had such a large majority, a very large majority, that you could always have rebellions and squeeze enough people back. Theresa May starts with no majority, and she starts with the majority she has being given by people who are completely opposed to her deal, which is why I'm totally in agreement with Craig about this. In the end, this will be resolved in Parliament. If Parliament can become a space...
Not if she shuts Parliament out.
But yes, and that's exactly right.
But one way or another, I think she is going to have to give up and say, I'm handing it over to Parliament, or Parliament is going to have to force it, and then be a safe space where people are able to work together and find some kind of consensus. Because it is the only way out, because all the other alternatives to most MPs are totally make them sick.
And she's got no cash in the bank to do that, though.
Well, we need a long holiday for that to happen, don't we? Thank you both for coming in.